Vikram. I'm a member of the Discovery course staff, and today I'm going to be walking you through the UC Berkeley admission rate practice problem on Prairie Learn. So right here, I have it all pulled up, and we're going to walk through each step of the problem, exactly how I would attack it, and how we're going to use the group by function in order to get ourselves an admission rate for this data set. So first things first, reading through the problem, we need to find an admission rate for each major. So right off the bat, by saying for each major here, what I'm immediately taking away from that is that we need to group by major. So we need to find a value for each major, not for every single value in the data set. And we need to store it in the column admission rate. So looking down at the dataset information, we see that we have a year column, a major column, a gender column, and an admission column. We don't have an admission rate. So that's also going to let us know that we need to create a new column called admission rate. So our solution should only include a row for each major. So like I said earlier, I think that the way to attack this problem is we're going to need to group by major. So having one value for each major in the admission rate column. So it needs to have a major, it needs to have an admission rate, and we can create a new column. So let's get into it. So right now we need to store this into DF applicants. And the DF has the original data frame information. So I'm going to start by commenting, and you're going to really like talk through the problem and try to understand what I'm writing before I start coding. So when looking at an admission rate, what that means to me is that we need to find the total number of people who were successes divided by the total population. So in this case, that's going to be the students that were accepted into UC Berkeley divided by the total amount of students. So looking at the data set right now, we don't have a total count for how many possible students there were that applied. And under the admission column, which tells us whether they got in or got rejected, so accepted or rejected, this value is a string right here. So I know that we're not going to be able to use something like sum. We're not going to be able to use something, anything numerical, because this is a string variable. So what my initial idea of how I would go about solving this problem would be, is that I need to create a grouped data frame. So we can start off and just start writing down these steps. So in order to get an admission rate, we need a number of accepteds divided by the total number. So we need a grouped data frame by major because we're trying to find the admission rate for each major. So we need to find a group data frame by major that only includes students who were accepted into UC Berkeley. I think I spelled that right. All right. So then for the second part of this, now if we create a group data frame that has only students that are accepted in UC Berkeley, if we think about this like a probability, so total of accepted divided by the total amount of the entire population, what we're going to need next is another group data frame that includes the total amount of students. That's going to be accepted and rejected. So we need a second group data frame. Oops. That includes every student who applied to UC Berkeley. And then number three is we're going to have to divide those numbers and create a new column called admission rate. So create a new column that is equal to accepted divided by total. Okay, so now that we have kind of the framework of how we're going to go about this, let's just get right into it. So to start off, we have this data frame that includes every single applicant who has applied to UC Berkeley in 1973. And what we need to find is first, we need to create a subset of that original data frame that's going to only include the number of people who are accepted. So I'll call this one accepted. And I want accepted to be where the admission column here is equal to accepted. So this isn't going to be a numerical value. It's not going to be like a 1 or a 0. It's just going to be this string accepted. So what we want to do is say df, because the original information is stored into just df, and then df dot, and the column name is admission. So make sure the column names are case sensitive when you're accessing them. I could also do it like df admission in quotes and brackets, we can just do that, is equal to, and we want it to be equal to accepted. So this is just the students who are accepted into UC Berkeley. And then close bracket there. Okay, so right now we have an accepted data frame that is including only the students who are accepted into UC Berkeley. But right now, this is every student who's accepting UC Berkeley. Now we have to, in order to be able to divide data frames, we need them to be just including the information we want, which is just the aggregated amount of acceptance or acceptances for this data frame. So we're going to need to group just the ones who are accepted. So we can set this equal to accepted group, just so we can see the difference here. You could also set it equal to just accepted and move on like that. But now we're going to need to group the accepted data frame. So accepted dot group by. And so what the group by function is doing is it's taking one column that you choose or multiple, but in this example, we're just going to be using one column. And so it's going to take one of these columns and it's going to combine and kind of collapse every single value that has the value that or each individual unique value in that thing. So for major, what that's going to let us know is that we're going to have an A column, or sorry, we're going to have an A row. We're going to have a row that is a group of all the students who applied that its majors were B. We're going to have that for C, D, E, and F. So the reason why we have to group also the accepted data frame and also the total amount is because in order to divide these two data frames, they have to be of the same length and have the same type of values. So right now, these are still strings. So we're going to have to aggregate. So first, let's group by major. So that's going to collapse each of the applicants whose major corresponds with one of these values. It's going to add them all up. But in order to add them all up, sometimes we'd use sum. But in this case, because these are string values, like we saw up here, the admission column is only looking at strings. We want to see how many. So we're trying to count everything up. So we're going to use the count. So .ag count here. And in quotes, we're going to have count. And then we always want to reset our index after. So this is going to allow us to keep the major column, because otherwise if we don't reset the index, it's just going to have the major column as the index. So always make sure to reset your index there. So right now we have our grouped data frame of just the people who were accepted. And now in order to get to the last step, for the second step, we need another group data frame that's going to include every single student who applied to UC Berkeley in order to have this second part of the admission rate column, which is the total. So now we can set this equal to DF applicant, since that's what we're gonna submit. We need the major column and the admission rate column there. So just like we did for here, we're gonna group by major and we're gonna aggregate and count. So df dot group by, and we're gonna do major dot ag count, and then always make sure to reset your index. Okay, so now what we have is we have our grouped data frame that is just students who were accepted, and we have the group data frame by major of all the students. So now we're going to be using DF applicants in our answer. And so in order to create a new admission rate column, we need to set this column equal to something. So we'll call it admission rate. So this is just the standard syntax for creating a new column, just brackets and then the new column name. You can also use this to override a column. So if I change this to major, I could change the major column name, but right now we want to add one. So we'll create this new column admission rate. And what do we want it to equal? Well, we want it to be the accepted count divided by the total count. So we have the accepted count, but in this counted data frame, it's going to have every single of these columns all counted up. So for 1973, it's going to have a count of all the values that are 1973, which will be every single one. So that'll just be the length of the data frame. So in order to get the admission count, we need to access the admission column. And now instead of being a string, this is going to be an integer value. So it's going to be the total amount that has been counted up for each major. So in order to access that column, we're just going to do accepted group dot admission. So this is going to be going into the accepted group data frame, which is our grouped one that's only the accepted students, and checking how many students were accepted by the count value of admission. And then we're going to divide that by the DF applicants admission column, since that's also going to be the same admission count, but that's for every single student. So now what we'll have here is an admission rate column that's dividing the total number of accepted students divided by the total number of students who applied. And this should give us the correct answer. I got scared there for a second because it said 0, but yep. So here we can see the admission rate column. We have a row for each major, so A, B, C, D, E, F, and it's taken the total number of accepted students and divided by the total number of students. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hope I was able to help.